Good morning, and welcome to All People's Church, Unitarian Universalist. My name is Michael Zepeda, and I'm here to lead worship and co-celebrate with Paul Schattman, who returns to the pulpit during our interim period between ministers. We are happy to see all of you here today. Our Sunday service is a shared time of worship for all present, as we gather for music, spoken words, a time of reflection and inspiration as a religious community. Let us come together in a spirit of compassion and respect for ourselves and others attending this service. We especially welcome those who are visiting today. If you haven't yet done so, please sign in at the visitors table by the front door, where you can be placed on our mailing list to receive weekly emails and the monthly newsletter. Before we continue on to worship, I do have a quick announcement. There is an RE fundraiser lunch today after services. It is Make Your Own Pasta Bar. It is prepared and served by the youth and the parents and the RE Council. It is a suggested $5 per bowl or $15 max per family. And I know that there is a vegan, a marinara with meatballs, and there is Alfredo, if that entices anyone. Good. It's you. You're up.
Okay. Our call to worship for today is from the Reverend Kathleen McTeague. We come together this morning to remind one another to rest for a moment on the forming edge of our lives, to resist the headlong tumble into that next moment until we can claim for ourselves awareness and gratitude, taking the time to look into one another's faces and see their communion, the reflection of our own eyes. This house of laughter and silence, memory and hope, is hallowed by our presence together.
I invite you to stand in body or spirit for the lighting of our chalice. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to the community, and to each other. Please remain standing as we join in singing our opening hymn, number 345, "With Joy We Claim the Growing Light." Join us in saying the affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve others in community, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another. And we invite the children and the young at heart to come forward for the time and the story for all ages, which will be led by Paul Schattman and Eliza Thornton.
Okay. Oh, Eliza, do you need a microphone? Okay. Okay. Well, today's story is not so much a story as it is a poem. It is from this book right here, which is called Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats. And Old Possum was a famous British poet named T.S. Eliot, and he wrote all these poems, and they were turned into a Broadway musical. Not as good as the poems, but Now, poetry is very good for teaching you things, besides rhyming. One of the things it can teach you is to keep your eyes open, because things that may look one way might be different than you think. For instance, some people think that fleas are black, but that's not true, you know, because Mary had a little lamb with fleas as white as snow. So, yeah, I know. Okay, this poem is called The Old Gumby Cat. I have a Gumby cat in mind. Her name is Jenny Anydots. Her coat is of the tabby kind, with tiger stripes and leopard spots. All day she sits upon the stair or on the steps or on the mat. She sits and sits and sits and sits. And that's what makes a Gumby cat.
But when the day's hustle and bustle is done, the Gumby cat's work is but hardly begun. And when all the family in bed and asleep, she slips down the stairs to the basement to creep. She's deeply concerned with the ways of the mice. Their behavior's not good and their manners not nice. So when she has got them lined up on the matting, she teaches them music, crocheting, and tatting.
I have a Gumby cat in mind. Her name is Jenny Anydots. Her equal would be hard to find. She likes the warm and sunny spots. All day she sits beside the hearth, or in the sun, or on my hat. She sits and sits help me out here, and sits and sits. And that's what makes a Gumby cat.
But when the day's hustle and bustle is done, the Gumby cat's work is but hardly begun. As she finds that the mice will not ever keep quiet, she is sure it is due to a regular diet, and believing that nothing is done without trying, she sets straight to work with baking and frying. She makes them a mouse cake of bread and dried peas and a beautiful fry of lean bacon and cheese.
Delicious.
I have a Gumby cat in mind. Her name is Jenny Anydots. The curtain cord she likes to wind and tie it into sailor knots. She sits upon the windowsill or anything that's nice and flat. Help me out here. She sits and sits. Everybody sits and sits. And that's what makes a Gumby cat.
But when the day's hustle and bustle is done, then the Gumby cat's work is but hardly begun. She thinks that the cockroaches just need employment to prevent them from idle and wanton destroyment. So she's formed from that lot of disorderly louts a troop of well-disciplined, helpful Boy Scouts, with a purpose in life and a good deed to do, and she's even created a beetle's tattoo.
So for all Gumby cats, let us now give 3 cheers, on whom well-ordered households depend. It appears, hip, hip, hooray. Hip, 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 hooray. And that is the gospel according to Old Possum. So, I hope you enjoyed it. Okay, so, we could have done McCavity, but he's not suitable for church. There we go. Thank you, thank you. Okay, let us sing these children back to wherever it is they wish to be.
As we leave this friendly place, love give light to every face. May the kindness which we learned light our hearts till we return. The offering that we take each Sunday isn't just a stale habit. It's an opportunity to recommit to this place and to this people. Our offering is an affirmation, a yes. When we give, we say yes to something we value. With our gifts freely given, may we say yes to the values of our faith. May our offering help us practice Unitarian Universalism within and beyond our congregation as tools to empower our mission. And as is our custom, we share the undesignated cash offerings of our plate. Our Share the Plate recipient this month is RACES, Refugee and Immigrant Center for Education and Legal Services. The offering will now be accepted. Will the ushers please come forward?
That was lovely. Thank you, guys. Okay, a reading for today, keeping with the poetry theme, is from a poet of the New England Renaissance, also a Unitarian, a Transcendentalist, and eventually a Unitarian Universalist, Ralph Waldo Emerson. If the red slayer thinks he's slain, or if the slain thinks he is slain, they know not well the subtle ways I keep, and pass and turn again. Far forgot to me is near, sunlight and shadow are the same. The vanished gods to me appear, and one to me are shame and fame. They reckon ill who leave me out. When me they fly, I am their wings. I am the doubter, and the doubt, and the hymn the Brahmin sings. The strong gods pine for my abode, and pine in vain the sacred seven. But thou, meek lover of the good, find me, and turn thy back on heaven. Join us in singing hymn number 102, We Are the Heirs of Many Ages. Stand if you are willing and able.
Please be seated. Return our minds and hearts to the joys and celebrations among us, as well as those who need our love and support in a time of sadness, illness, or loss. If you are so moved, we invite you to light a candle now or at any time during the service in our meditation center over here to the side of the chancel. At our church, we covenant to share happiness and our burdens, and in doing so, it is our intention to be authentically present to one another. So in our Book of Memory and Hope this morning, I have been asked to share these stories. Joe Burnham asks me to remind you all that today is Don't Forget to Feed Me Sunday, where she is collecting any excess funds you may have to go to the pet food pantry that we have been supporting since the COVID started. Also, if you contribute to Eastside Community Services, a big thank you. And if you don't yet, you might consider contributing this week if you can. Although Eastside is in line to receive 2 large grants, this week and last week, the organization will need some help meeting their basic operating expenses for the food and clothes it provides in our East Fort Worth neighborhood. So thank you for considering that as you're making your donations. Let us open our minds and hearts to the place of quiet, to the silent prayer for the healing of pain and the soft, gentle coming of love.
Well, humans tend to be mighty careless with their words. We confuse knowledge for belief all the time, and this is the burden of my speech, the difference between knowing and believing. A while back, I came across a newspaper item, one of those little block ads. Yes, I still read the paper. And I'm an old person. Anyway, the ad read, "I am saved. Jesus is my Savior. I'm going to heaven. I know I am saved." Well, he didn't know any such thing. He believed it, but he didn't know it. You see the same thing often on television. It might be one of these late-night megachurch ministers, or a tub-thumping Bible beater at 4 o'clock on a Sunday morning, all coiffed and groomed like a used car salesman. Or it might be a pundit on a talk show holding forth about what they know really happened or what they know is going to happen, and they don't know. The surest way to know something is empirically, that is to say, either by direct experience or through application of the scientific method. Observation, theory, test, result, repeat, confirmation. As most of you here know, my background's in political science, so we'll take an example from there. Take a purely fictitious politician. Let's call him Ronald Schlump. You might say, "I know he's a liar." No, you don't. You believe he's a liar. But you can only know it empirically. So you watch him. You listen to what he says. You compare it to the known and verifiable facts. If what he says doesn't conform to the facts, then you can say he lied, but you can't say he's a liar. Maybe he just misspoke. You have to repeat the process again and again and again, and if the same pattern repeats itself over and over again, then you can say, I know he's a liar. The second way to know is by ratiocination, or as Sherlock Holmes called it, the art of deduction. For example, on a given Sunday morning, you lock up the house, leaving the dog inside by himself because it's too hot, and you went to church. And you come home 3-4 hours later, long service. And your hyper dog is conked out on his bed. He did not come as usual, jumping and slobbering and pawing all over you the minute you stepped through the door. There's a slight bulge in his midsection. Shredded remains of a gallon Ziploc in the living room. And then you realize that the 2-pound block of Vermont extra sharp white cheddar cheese, which you paid $15 for only yesterday, is nowhere to be seen. Assembling and analyzing these facts, you may then reasonably claim that you know Plato has learned to stand on his hind legs and can now reach the most remote corner of the kitchen counter. Now, that might be just anecdotal evidence. But last week, under similar circumstances, a gallon bag of vanilla almond granola also disappeared. So I think we have confirmation on that as well. Now, people say they know things in other ways. You might have heard someone say, I know in my heart, or I know intuitively thus and so to be true. They don't. They believe. But their belief is an interpretation of external stimuli from their 5 senses, and their memories, and their expectations, and emotions, and maybe a little chemistry in there too. Others might have said, I know X, Y, or Z instinctively. No, they don't. Humans swapped instincts for higher cognitive function at the Charlie Darwin evolution store millions of years ago, and other animals, including higher primates, dogs, dolphins, have done the same. Even pigs, surprisingly, have demonstrated these kinds of cognitive abilities. Like humans, they too consciously and unconsciously rely on external stimuli to clue them in to what's going on. If instinct alone governed animal behavior, they wouldn't come within miles of us. That's under any circumstances. As Unitarian Universalists, we claim to seek knowledge in freedom, but knowing is not the same as believing. Belief is changeable over time. Things we believed as children, we don't believe anymore. Belief is risky. Belief is committing your essential self to a proposition that at best will be challenged, ridiculed, and dismissed, or at worst, condemned out of hand and suppressed by force. Unitarian Universalism claims to be a non-creedal church. There's a little problem with that. The English word believe comes from the Latin credere, as in credo in unum Deum, I believe in one God. You've seen the little red card, what do Unitarian Universalists believe? It is said UUs can believe anything they want. We may have even said it ourselves. But that's not quite the truth. Endlessly debated, the existence or non-existence of God is ultimately unprovable one way or another. I can believe there is no God, but I can't know it. Belief is what we rely on when we cannot know. Another word for that is having faith. In Unitarian Universalism, each of us is the architect of his or her own faith. Rather than be told what we must believe, we choose what to believe for ourselves, and we affirm without prejudice that same freedom to everyone else. We choose our beliefs. One of our former ministers here, Marjorie Montgomery, called Unitarian Universalism a multi-creedal church. I got creeds, you got creeds, all God's children got creeds. Okay? In a very real sense, the chosen beliefs, and to whatever extent we observe them, are our individual creeds. I say to whatever extent because, like other churches, unfortunately, we tend to state our beliefs in absolute terms. For example, we believe in the worth and dignity of each human being. I don't. I think that people are born tabula rasa, blank tablet, and they grow into their character by how they were raised, what they experienced in life, and what they do and say. That condition of dignity and worth can be forfeited by their words and deeds. Could also be recovered. But usually it's just forfeited. Hitler, Stalin, Pol Pot, and a few living examples mentioning no names, Ken Paxton, Greg Abbott, Dan Patrick. In fact, I probably have a quibble with every statement on the little red card. Some serious, some not so serious. But that's my creed, my faith. I built it. I'm responsible for it. Just as you built yours and are responsible for it. And, hang on, don't be shocked. I might be wrong. I never make mistakes. We assert our right to believe in Unitarian Universalism as opposed to other faith traditions. We don't claim to know. In closing, let me read you a brief note from Benjamin Franklin, written shortly before his death, about 4 months before his death. They were going to put a portrait of him up in the entry hall at Yale College, as it was known then. But the president of the college, Ezra Stiles, was told that Franklin's beliefs were too unorthodox. And so he wrote a letter to Franklin asking, what exactly do you believe? And here's what Franklin wrote back. I believe in one God, creator of the universe, that he governs it by his providence, that he ought to be worshipped, and that the most acceptable service we can render him is doing good to his other children, that the soul of man is immortal, and will be treated with justice in another life to come, respecting its conduct in this life. I take these to be fundamental principles of all sound religion and regard them as you do in whatever sect I meet with them. As to Jesus of Nazareth, my opinion of whom you particularly desire, I think the systems of morals and religion as he left them to us, the best the world has ever seen or is likely to see. But I apprehend it has received various corrupting changes, and I have, with most of the present dissenters in England, some doubts as to his divinity, though it is a question I do not dogmatize upon, having never studied it, and think it needless to busy myself with it now, when I expect soon an opportunity of knowing the truth with far less trouble. I see no harm, however, in its being believed, if that belief has the good consequence, as it probably has, of making his doctrines more respected and better observed, especially as I do not perceive that the Supreme Being takes it amiss by distinguishing unbelievers in his government of the world with any marks of his displeasure. I shall only add, respecting myself, that having experienced the goodness of that being in conducting me prosperously through a long life, I have no doubt of its continuance in the next, though without the smallest conceit of meriting that goodness. I think Ben Franklin would have made a good Unitarian Universalist. But he never claimed any one church. He distinguished knowledge from belief his whole life, and I think we would do well if we tried our best to follow his example. And that is all I have to say on the subject, and we have now come to our closing hymn, number 89. But before we start on that, I should remind everybody that we have lunch available after the service, courtesy of the RE Council and the kids, and everyone would be welcome to partake. So please do, if you have the time. All right.
Never has it been more true than now. We extinguish this flame, but the sparks within us remain alight. From each of us, in our supposed solitude, the signal buzzes and hums. sparkling through space to one another, connecting us invisibly but palpably. We are one, and from every window our light shines.
We leave this gathered community, but we don't leave our connection, our concerns, our care for each other, our service to each other, to the world, and to our faith. That continues. Until we are together again, friends, be strong, be well, be true, be loving, and we will see you next Sunday, we hope.